Welcome to Breaking News with Ben Hunt, Jack Forehand, and Matt Ziegler. Before we start, let me remind you what the show is not. Breaking News is not a show about fact-checking. Breaking News is not a show about saying whose bias is the one and only correct bias. And Breaking News is definitely not a show about calling out fake news. Breaking News is a show where we look at today's top stories and have a conversation around our favorite critical question, why am I reading this now? Drawing on the headlines we're tracking at fiatnews.com, join us as we talk about what's collectively making us tick, with clear eyes, full hearts, and this obligatory disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast is advising you to buy or sell any security or to do anything with your money. Seriously, you should only act on investment advice from someone you know and someone who knows your unique situation. We are not that person.
You're watching Breaking News on the Epsilon Theory YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matt Ziegler, joined as always by Jack Forehand. Say hello, Jack.
Hello, Jack.
And Ben, the hot chicken himself, Hunt. Say hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben, the hot chicken himself. I love that. That's good.
I think it'll always be funny when I do this just because I did it wrong for so long. I think it's still going to be funny no matter how long I keep doing it the right way.
I wanted you to give that opportunity to just get that out there first, declare proudly like you know what the deal is. It's a good sign.
It is. It really is.
I do feel proud of myself.
Well, pack show, extra spicy, but not get the cluck out. Hattie B spicy. Thank the gods, I'm still recovering. Zeitgeist. We have some post Being Human in an Age of AI conference comments that we want to talk about, particularly around higher education. And we're going to get more into that with a tweet of the week, because we've got a great one on the higher costs of higher educations, financially and socially. We want to get into all that. The mailbag's back. This one's really great. It's a question combo about the merits of write-in candidates and how we think about that stuff. I've got a Cultish Corner. I want to talk a little bit about Fugazi, why they famously didn't have any merchandise except for that one time. And it's just a great story about scale and the limitations of things that you love. But first, big picture, election 2024. Narrative world's getting turned up and turned loose, it feels like. Trump's guilty. Biden is tired, in need of a nap, frail. My Phillies extra or intra-inning commercials that I'm seeing, I thought they were crazy a month or two ago. They're we're unhinged. They're just getting bizarro world. So I want to start here. Ben, start with this with me. I was in an airport when the Trump trial results came in, and just judging by the number of people who gathered around the TV, I was like, oh, I can sit next to this television in this airport, waiting to board my flight, and it's good and quiet over here. And then that TV turned on, the results came on, and man, did that draw a crowd. What's going on with these trial results and how they're being positioned?
So I got to tell you, Matt, because I had the same experience. I was getting off a plane, and then there was, the buzz around, oh, the verdict's coming out, the verdict's in, and all I can compare it to is the results of a sporting event that everyone is following. Of course, with sporting events, you know when it's over, you know when the final score is going to be revealed, and you don't with a trial, but I thought the whole experience gave new meaning to the phrase show trial. And I say that not to diminish the seriousness of it, although I kind of mean to diminish the seriousness of it also. I think that it was pure entertainment. And I think that the lack of any lasting political consequences, which we talked about in the show, we said there won't be any lasting political consequences, and there aren't, is testament to the show trialness of the whole thing. It was all for show. It was and show for what? You know me, man. I get frustrated about these things because I believe very firmly that Donald Trump actively attempted to subvert the 2020 election, that he actively planned to overthrow the freaking government. I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that. And this show trial on New York State for this crap, it is what a well, in a sense, it's kind of a good comeback to people who say, well, it's all a conspiracy, weaponization of the justice effort, if not the Justice Department specifically, because nobody could be this dumb to think, oh, this now we're really going to get him. And yet, this is where we are. I'm pretty down about it, Matt. I really am. I'm pretty down about it. I'm down about what absolutely seems to me to be a politicization of justice. And we have an attorney general who is elected to office on a campaign promise to get the guy, and then comes up with this, which the Biden DOJ passed, said, no, this is ridiculous. The Federal Election Commission said, no, we really don't think this was actually an election crime. And yet this is what you convict him on. And I defy anyone to tell me what the actual crime was, because it was a misdemeanor that becomes a felony if it is in conjunction with some uncharged notion of election undermining. And it's just...
And the judge didn't make them come up with what the actual crime was, right? He allowed them to choose from like different crimes in terms of what the misdemeanor was in support of.
Right. Well, because it becomes a felony if it is in support of any crime. And that is just, it does not pass to my mind. And I can't stand the guy, but it doesn't pass a smell test to me. And then to say, well, convicted felon, like those are magic words now. What did you think would happen? What did you think would happen? And the answer is no one is thinking, or you're thinking in the same way. And we talked about this too, that, oh, I know, if we can just keep him off the ballot, that'll do it. It's just the only way to win this election is at the freaking ballot box, is to win a good candidate, is to run a decent candidate and win. And if he runs again, you beat him again. And then you beat him again. That's how you defeat this stuff. You don't do it with a show trial. Anyway, it's just all, if it weren't so serious and meaningful for our lives, it'd be really funny.
Could you talk for a second about, because I was really, I'm saying in jest about the in between innings of a baseball game with these commercials, but then I'm seeing this stuff on TV, and I think it was like CNN was on one channel in the airport, and I saw Fox on another covering the trial and covering this stuff. So like of these media outfits like covering this stuff, it feels like I'm watching sports talk radio or sports talk post game. Like,
Exactly.
It's literally we are stretching out through lines with little causal ramifications of anything they're talking about. It's just like, yeah, the pitcher got up through pitches, and this is what happens sometimes. Are you seeing anything with the news stuff with
we're
CNN
filling
and Fox?
the air. We're filling the air time. That's all this is. And it is. I think the sports radio commentary, local sports radio commentary, is a perfect example. This is the level that we're on. It's, for all you people in the Northeast, it's FAN talking about the Yankees. Mm-hmm. And, Sal from Staten Island wants to call in and give his opinion, and the host is going to argue with him. Come on, people. But this is our world. It's just a sports radio world. It's professional wrestling, all kayfabe all the time.
But in terms of like how this is playing out in narrative world, like it seems to me like the people I talk to around me, like the whole convicted felon ads are working against Biden. Like they're working in Trump's favor. The fact that he's a convicted felon, they're trying to use that against him. It doesn't seem to be working at all.
Yeah, because nobody thought that Trump was anything other than just a lying, philandering, no good guy. I mean, this is going to change anyone's opinion about Trump, and you're doing it in a way that is so patently politically motivated, just patently. I mean, it's not even, there's not even like a veneer of cover to it. You've got the attorney general saying, I am running for office on the promise that I'm going to do this. And there was no shift in common knowledge. See, that's what breaks things. That's what changes things, is when a common knowledge shifts. When you just can't support somebody more. You know what I think could actually make a difference? It's the classified document case. It's the Jan 6 case against Trump, especially for what he did in Georgia. And instead we get just the clown car of people pushing these efforts forward. It's hard to believe that the people, I'll say, who come up with the charges and prosecute these cases, and I'm thinking about the Georgia case in particular, it's hard to believe that they're not just kind of secretly working for Trump, because they're so freaking incompetent and venal and just dumb. It does make me angry.
What about on the Biden side? Because as much as like the Trump
we are getting a common knowledge moment, right? So as much as the trial, the convicted felon, it doesn't change anyone's view on anything except to harden your view that yes, in fact, this was a politically motivated show trial. On the other hand, I mean, I'll tell you, man, I can't do it anymore. I can't watch any more videos of the president being led off stage by the hand. I can't do it anymore. I can't watch him kind of wander off and give a thumbs up to two guys kind of working on something on the ground and have to be led back to the crowd by Maloney or whoever it was at the G7 meeting. I can't do it anymore.
It's hard. It's genuinely hard as a human.
Can't do it anymore, Matt.
It's hard. Yeah.
You feel the same way?
Yeah, and so I'm feeling the common knowledge shift because as I'm watching these political attack ads, I'm seeing one side trying to, label all the whatever the most recent horrible case that some group is trying to level against Trump. And then when they show the Biden stuff, like that hits close to home. I don't care what your political affiliation is. If you've taken care of an elderly family member or anybody in your life and you've gone, oh, I've seen that look on grandpa or dad or whatever the situation may be. And that's one where I'm like, number one, the ads feel just mean-spirited, which frustrates me. But then on top of the mean-spirited nature, I go, I think a lot of people actually recognize this stuff, and they're mean ads. They're rough. Like, they are rough to watch, but God, are they relatable? And I can't help but wonder if like those are actually impacting, to Jack's point, are those impacting the common knowledge between how people think about this guy?
It's impacting me as a Biden supporter. And I'm a Biden supporter because I will never vote for Trump. And I can't do it anymore. I can't support the guy anymore. And it's interesting that because you're in Pennsylvania, right? So you're at ground zero.
I'm getting all the swing state chaos. Like, it's nuts.
Because really,
already.
This election comes down to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. If Biden wins, he wins. And if Trump wins, I mean, Biden's got to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He can lose the other, and he will, I think. But if he can win those three, then he wins. And if he loses one of those three, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, he loses. I mean, that's the math. So yeah, every marginal dollar is going to be directed at you, Matt. Every marginal dollar. That's got to be hard. So I'm not seeing the ads. I'm not subjected to
either.
that. I just get it I see it just on my Twitter feed. And it is some of the worst people in the world who are always publishing this, but you see 5 of them and you think, oh, well, maybe those are, deceptively edited and the like. But then you see 50, you see the the fundraiser. We were in LA. We weren't at that fundraiser with Obama and Jimmy Kimmel and Clooney but when Obama leads him off the hand, says, "Come on, Joe, you got to go now." I mean, that was just it. There are these moments, these common knowledge moments, and it is why the story of the Emperor's New Clothes and the little girl in the audience says, "Hey, he's naked." Why that's such a powerful story in game theory. There are moments when common knowledge, what the crowd thinks that the crowd thinks, when that shifts, that changes everything. Changes everything in an election, changes everything in our markets. What I think is happening is that the common knowledge, what everyone knows that everyone knows about Biden, which is that he's old, but it's okay, that feels like it's shifting to me. Like it's shifting to he's old and it's not okay. It's so that's why it's shifting in me.
The May to June switch in political ads has basically been watching the Democrat side double down post-Trump trial stuff with the convicted felon and everything else. So we've gone from like mostly focused on like women's rights and things like that to now really leaning into the convicted felon thing on the Democrat side. On the Republican side, the shift was some things showing a confused Joe Biden in like one part of a commercial to now entire dedicated commercials of confused Joe Biden. Can you trust this person with nuclear codes? Like that's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we are.
And seeing where each of them has increased their bets. And am I correct to think about it this way? Like the media people putting this stuff together, like they're increasing bets on what's working. That's my I don't want to say cynical. My critical takeaway from like studying this stuff is, oh crap, this is what they both think is working with their demographics as they're choosing how to position these ads.
Yeah, and I think that the Republican attack ads are correct, and I think the Democratic attack ads are wrong. I think if the Democratic attack ads that worked are the ones on women's rights and abortion, right? Those are the ones that work. Because they just ring true. And I think the Republican attack ads on Biden work because whether you want to go back to Goldwater, whether you want to go back to Reagan, whether the kiss of death for an opponent is to paint them as being incompetent in the sense not that they can't do the job, but mentally incompetent. And like that was so effective with LBJ against Goldwater. I don't know if you, so LBJ ran the commercials of the atomic bomb going off, and it was this, do you want this guy to be anywhere close to the codes? And we're kind of at that point with Biden now. I mentioned Reagan because what Reagan was so effective at was never allowing even a hint of that mental incompetence to come up. It was tried on him.
But he spun it. He knew how to counter it in advance.
He spun it. He had his lines worked out, and he was good on his feet in a way that Biden is not. I mean, Biden can still read a teleprompter. That's his profession. But away from the teleprompter, it's getting to the point where I can't do it anymore. And so much of it is with Reagan, who actually did have, Alzheimer's there. And I think that last year of his presidency, he was not there at all. But you never got that because he had an imposing physical demeanor and bearing, which he used very much to his advantage in a way that Biden cannot use. I mean, he's got arthritis, he's got the stiffness, he does have the speech impediment. And we're at a point where that just doesn't work for me anymore as a whitewashing of this. I say, I can't do it anymore. I'd love to stay there and say with a straight face, no, I'm sure it's fine. And I can't do it anymore. I don't think it's fine.
I don't know if you guys found yourself with this too, but I found myself worrying about the debates. Like for him personally, almost like it's going to be, I know the rules are a little bit different this time. There's going to be less debates. They're going to be turning people's mics off or whatever it is. But, it's still, I mean, is he going to be able to hold up? Like I found myself worrying for him when he has to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, Jack, because, you know, it's not like Trump is some like, oh, mastermind here or paragon of. Honestly, I feel very confident that Trump is in worse physical health than Biden. I actually believe that, and yet I just can't do it anymore with Biden. The debates are going to be really interesting. Honestly, at this point, I just think that if Biden doesn't soil himself on the debate stage, I think he wins. This is where we are. I don't know, man. It's Biden can absolutely still, and you see this with, I'll just say it, with older people. I see it with myself too. So long as I am on script and I know what I'm going to be talking about, man, it's like I'm 30 years old. I can speak like I was 40 years ago. You get me off script. I'm slower. I don't recall as quickly. I mess up on names. You find ways to kind of work around it where you construct the sentence so you don't have to say someone's name. We all know people in our lives who do that. You tell the same story over and over again, just in maybe slightly different ways. So the debate can be structured to favor that, where you've kind of got down pat, here are my stock responses. Here's where whatever is questioned or asked of me, I'm going to steer it to X. And you don't soil yourself on stage, then I think Biden will be fine in the debate. And that kind of makes me really sad because I kind of want a flame out so he can get somebody else out there to run against Trump. That's my bottom line. I don't want Trump elected.
Is there any, I mean, you start to see that more and more on Twitter now, this idea that there's some grand plan behind the scenes to get someone in there to replace Biden. I mean, do you think there's anything at all to that?
Is there something to it? Are there people hoping to do that? 100% there's something to it. And the usual suspects on the Viveks of the world are going to try to pre-sabotage any effort to do that because they want to run against Biden. But it's very hard to change horses because he is the president. He did win. These men and women who achieved these positions, my God, you think portfolio managers have big egos? Holy crap. We're talking egos of gargantuan proportions. I don't know how bad it would have to be to change the horse in midstream. I hope they do. But man, oh man, that's a hard one. That's a hard one.
This sounds like a question for ChatGPT 4, maybe 5 or 6 to solve. Let's take it to the Zeitgeist. We were all just in Nashville together talking about being human in an age of AI. And I want to connect to this for a second. Extra Epsilon Connect 2024 pun, I guess, inside of that. What, Jack, I want to start with you. Did anything change in your perspective of like AI or any big conference post thoughts and just being human that you're coming home with?
Yeah, well, first, Ben, I just want to compliment you on this. It was like the best conference I've ever attended. And
thank you, Jack.
Really, I just gone to a financial planning conference before where it was basically like a bunch of people pitching their book on stage, and then you got to go to the booths where they would sell you some more stuff. And like, I mean, everybody was there, just a tremendous collection of people. Like everybody's hugging each other. Like people, you would just talk to them and they'd be the most humble people. And then they would tell you about their life accomplishments. You're like, holy crap. Like this person has done some amazing things. It was just, I will say, like I was honored to be invited, and it was really cool to be involved in it.
Well, it was very special to have both of you guys there, and you made a difference. You absolutely made a difference with the vibe, to use that word, right, is profoundly non-transactional, which is just so rare these days. It was people who were really curious about each other and trying to figure stuff out together, it's the antidote, my friends. That is the antidote. Just
Yeah. And to your question, Matt, like what it got me really thinking about is I really hadn't thought about like being human in a world of AI. I'd thought about AI. I thought about how to use AI. I thought about how to use it at work and personally, but I hadn't really thought about like how it impacts all of us as people, and what it's going to mean to be human as this stuff comes on. So like I don't really have an answer to that, but I mean I think that was really what was great about it is everybody's taking the opposite take on AI. They're trying to figure out how to use it and or all that stuff, and we did do some of that, but a lot of it was just about how to be a human being, how to be a person, how to talk to each other in this world. And you had people all the way, you had really young people who were deep in AI, you had people, who were older, who hadn't used it at all. Matt and I were doing some live interviews from there and about people in AI, and we got the entire range. I mean, we got people who've never touched it to people who are deep in it. And it was just great to get all those perspectives on what they thought on that question.
Ben, what about you? What's the post-conference, what's being human mean since you got home?
Well, when I say that the antidote is connecting in person and having these conversations, I really mean it. And what struck me pretty hard at this conference, well, two things struck me really hard. The first is that I actually have great conversations with ChatGPT. I find it to be very humanizing. And I also recognize that it is being used to dehumanize us. But I think that, and what I mean is it's more than just, it's just a tool. It can be used for good or bad. That's all true. I find a very humanizing core at the foundation of generative AI, because it really does help us, and us includes the machine intelligence, to make better connections. That to me is, so it's more than just, it's a neutral tool, it can be used for good or for bad. No, I think there's actually a core of really powerful humanizing goodness within it. So that was the one thing that really struck me about the conference. The second, I kind of am a believer in this whole synchronicity thing, that you see a breadcrumb, that's interesting. You see two breadcrumbs on the same path, you say, I need to pay attention. If you see three breadcrumbs, man, the world is telling you something and you need to follow that breadcrumb path. Well, I mean, this conference is like somebody got a helicopter and just dumped, a swimming pool worth of breadcrumbs on top of us. So many people to Jack's point, different ages, different walks of life, men, women, all looking for the same thing: human connection, an autonomy of mind, a bottom-up effort to do it where we're not fodder for some corporation or some political party. Didn't have a conversation about politics once. Not once the whole weekend. I never talked about Trump or Biden. Not once. Instead, it was just conversation after conversation about finding our humanity and what we make and what we teach and how we protect. All of that. It was so authentic and moving for all those reasons.
It's amazing to be in a group of people and have those curious conversations, have those delightful, even, I thought about this one a lot, not going to put direct people on the spot, but little stuff like, even when somebody puts their foot in their mouth, there'd be an amazing breadcrumb on the other side. So even next to the coffee counter, when somebody says, I don't know, I really just haven't been able to get myself using the GPTs or any of this AI stuff, but Microsoft keeps yelling at me. And the next thing you know, somebody's like, well, I'm one of the heads of AI at Microsoft.
Yes, right.
And you're like, that is a vibe killer. But I witnessed that exact thing happen at the conference. and then watch those two people take their coffee to a table and not move for 40 minutes.
It was right. I mean, it's that shit really happened.
That happened. I saw
Right,
it.
over and over and over
Right.
again, things like that. It was amazing. Just amazing.
It's a really cool thing to see. So one of the other really cool things to witness, and I'm going to segue this directly into the tweet of the week because I think this is just a fantastic through line here, is there was a presentation on higher education. And this was one of the moments in the conference where we actually saw some opposing viewpoints kind of meet on the power of education and what education is important for, but also just the scaling up of our educational entities in this country. It was an interesting total shift. Explain what you think you saw on stage and what that moment was, Ben. For
I don't think it was a meeting of opposing viewpoints. I think it was that the audience had a very unified viewpoint, and the speaker was on the receiving end of that, frankly, anger at big college. I get the anger. I don't think it was all entirely misplaced, because the speaker changed around what he was going to be talking about and last minute decided to, I'm going to make this a full-throated defense of the academy and college for, the bastion of civilization and all that is good in the world. I'm over characterizing that, but only a little bit. And he just ran into a buzzsaw, and this did surprise me. The anger, right? We're talking about what an amazing weekend it was and how welcoming and open-hearted, full-hearted everyone was, and that's all true. But I was frankly kind of taken aback by the anger that exists at the institution, the business of big college, because that was the anger, and that was the misconnect between the speaker and the audience. The speaker wanted to talk about, let's start with Aristotle's Academy and how that's so important to preserve today. And man, people just weren't having any of it. And it was talking past each other. The audience is so angry at the business of big college and his role as this giant Hogwarts sorting hat. And the speaker wanted to talk about something else. And so he became the lightning rod for the anger of the crowd. So it wasn't pretty. It resolved itself, I think, pretty well, given the overarching full-heartedness of the weekend. But that was really telling to me, Matt, that there is this, again, across ages, across class, across race, gender, everything, there is a profound anger at what I've called kind of our modern day church. It is the same sort of anger that I think had to exist in, the late 16th century when Martin Luther was talking about indulgences with the Catholic Church. Had very much that same sort of vibe.
It feels a lot like, and it felt a lot like, and I want to emphasize the nuance. It's not like the speaker got carried out and,
right,
lit on fire or something like that. This was thoughtful nuance around it, but it was an immersion feeling of the group going, wait, we're actually aware of this. It feels a lot like somewhere in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the decline of, in my northeastern part of the country where I grew up, sort of the decline of many of the very structured religions, the lack of kids who are going to have any future involvement in church once they're out of mom, dad's, and grandma's house or whatever. And then but we were still going to go to college. We still had faith in, I'm going to go get an education. I'm going to go do this thing and whatever else. Now all of a sudden with that same scrutiny of being like, my parents did that, but that's not really my thing anymore. It kind of feels like big colleges having that moment. Jack, why don't you get this tweet of the week up on the screen? Tell us what's in this tweet. Let's connect this through, because this is something that's happening way bigger than the conference, and we saw it in this tweet.
Yeah, before I read that, I just want to say, Ben, one thing I will say is, like, there was definitely disagreement, but how it was done was excellent. Like, if that had happened on Fox News or MSNBC or something, it would have been a shit show of people yelling and screaming at each other. And, like, I mean, everybody was respectful. Everybody, I mean, even the speaker at the end, like you said, it ended fairly well. It ended with people, disagreeing, and Rafa did an exceptional job, I thought, moderating that whole thing. He did a really good job of getting the hard questions in there, but also doing it in a respectful way.
I thought so too. Good point, Jack.
So moving on to the less maybe positive tweet of the week. You had a tweet from Milt Winter, I guess, which is he had tweeted, "Private equity is coming to college athletics. As detailed in this article, the Big 12 is considering an equity investment of up to $1 billion for 20% of the conference," which is shocking to me. But then you had responded and said the Big 12 is made up of schools like Baylor, while the self-reported cost to attend is $71,000 per year. What are we even doing, people? So what was your reaction to this in general?
The Big 12? The Big 12? You gotta get tongue-tied, right? So no, it's Baylor, it's Texas Tech, it's the University of Central Florida, it's BYU, it's all fine schools, I'm sure. We're going to value the conference, the amateur athletic conference of the Big 12 at $5 billion? That's going to be the pre-money valuation here? What? Wait, what? This is a European private equity? It turns out that the new commissioner of the Big 12, he's a private equity guy. And so they're talking about, we're going to take a 20% stake, and here's $800 million for your schools to split. Thank you very much. 20% of, I don't know, would their ESPN rights come back up for so you've got that, and juxtapose this against the big college effort, meaning Baylor. I know people go to Baylor. Baylor's a fine school. And I'm saying that because that's what you say about a college like Baylor. You say, oh, well, that's a fine school. And it's over $70,000 a year. The guy at the conference has said, my son goes to Miami. Miami! It's going to cost $100,000. The University of Miami, right? We're not talking Yale. We're talking, the sports thing I keep thinking about. Who was the football coach? I think he was for, you'll know this, Matt. Was it for the Bills, or who was the coach? Playoffs? When somebody asks him, what do you think about the playoffs? And he's playoffs? Or not, they're going to play. That's my reaction. $100,000 a year. Miami, or $100,000 a year. What are we doing here, people?
Was it Jim Mora?
I think it was Jim Mora. Oh, yeah. Well done,
Thanks,
Matt. Thank you very much.
No, that was
playoffs?
Me cheating on Google. But yeah, that was fantastic.
Very good. We're so far beyond this notion of education, and we are so deep into the same issues that blew up the Catholic Church in the 1500s. They're not, that became less of an institution to save souls and much more of an institution for amassing land and money and power. And how can you say anything other than that about today's colleges, like Baylor at $70,000 a year, or Miami at $100,000 a year, or where we had the conference, Vanderbilt's $100,000 a year. What are we doing? What are we even doing here, right? So you've got endowments of billions of dollars where they're tax exempt investment operations. You've got these universities. I know more about Vanderbilt than the others. I mean, the new chancellor there at Vanderbilt, he's doing great because he's raised $3 billion over the last couple of years. And where tuition is in room and board year expensive are $100,000 a year? Seriously? And where private equity is going to buy a 20% stake in the Big 12? Yes, we're so divorced from what the meaning of college, I think, was the common knowledge of college. What we all know that college means a way to get ahead, it's a way for personal mobility in education. That's got to be like meaning number 135 now behind private equity investments in your amateur athletics conference and tuition at $100,000 a year. I don't know what gives, man. I don't know what gives, but there's a groundswell of just incredible anger here, and we saw it even at our conference, that nobody's wrestling with. And if something's going to blow up our world, it's whenever this blows up. I don't know what it blows up into. I don't know what it blows up into.
Well, that was going to be my question. Do you think like that groundswell of anger coupled with everything that's going on in AI and technology, I mean, is there anything here to be optimistic about in terms of that, the ability to fix this? I got a kid going 8 years. I'm going to be paying these prices. So I'm trying to think through my own world. Like, is there any reason for optimism about this as we move forward?
I can't find a one, Jack. I can't find a single reason for optimism, because I can certainly see how generative AI in particular, can solve issues of education, but there's nothing about education in this. This is about class and a sorting hat, and about professional athletics, professional investing, and a sorting hat for the modern caste system in America. I say education. What did you learn? I feel like that's now reason 135 on the list.
And to your point on college athletics, you retweeted this as well. Like, there was some picture of like when the recruits were arriving at some college, and like there were these like Lamborghinis or something lined up. It's just amazing. UT,
we got the Lamborghinis out because it's your signing day, and so our alumni association through the NIL program, we're going to buy you a Lambo. And I'm not going to lie, part of my kind of discomfort with the whole thing was, why isn't DeBoer doing that in Tuscaloosa? I mean, why are we letting Texas do this? Sarkeesian's getting a leg up on us here. Come on, Bama.
It introduces a whole different strategy to the game. Like, you're recruiting for the gram. Like, we saw it basically.
That's why Saban left. That's why Saban left. Look, Bama's loaded for next year. They got their quarterback. They and Saban's an amazing recruiter. And, finished the game where they lost to freaking Michigan, they're up by 7 points with 3 minutes to go. But we're going to let that aside. Saban quits. Because he said, look, the day after, the players are coming up to me, and it's about, what's my playing time going to be? And, how much am I getting paid? And Saban said, I'm out. I don't have to anymore, so I'm out. This is where we are. And Jack, I don't see it getting any better. I see it getting much worse before it gets any better, because there's nothing about the new technologies that solve what big college has become. An investment arm a sports and gambling league and a sorting hat for our modern caste system. With infinite financing by the federal government, infinite, no limits to financing that $100K a year, no limits. I don't think it's better at all.
This is the new MPT with the printing press that is college sports. Let's jump into the mailbag. Jack, we found a question here about well, we're bringing this back. So by all means, if you're still with us here watching, of course you are, send us an email, send us a message, drop it in the YouTube comments. The YouTube algorithmic gods love a message in the comments. We always get some fun ones. The Epsilon forums are open. You can find all our emails on Twitter, everywhere else. Jack, I think the question was about the merits of write-in candidates. Do you have it there? Can you give us this question?
Yes, I can read it. And also, this is a conversation I had a lot at Connect, and I encourage people. So I'm going to hold all of you accountable. The people there told me they're going to be sending us questions. So hopefully going forward, we'll have a lot more questions. But yeah, this is an interesting question. This whole idea of, I don't think anybody, I can't, other than the most partisan people, I can't find anybody who's particularly happy with the slate of free people that are sitting in front of us right now. But then the idea is, what do you do about it? If you actually want to, if you feel much more strongly that a certain person should not go in relative to one of the others, you could argue your best approach here is to vote for the candidate. You may not like him, but it's a better candidate than the other one. And when people ask the question, and the question was about writing in a vote. And so writing in a vote for somebody who's not on the ballot, is that a legitimate thing to be doing here? Or is the best thing to be doing to try to maybe vote for the candidate I don't like as much, but is better than the alternatives that I see out there? I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Ben.
I do have thoughts. I think that your vote is the smallest aspect of your political participation. And you should remember that. And you should make your vote the smallest portion of your political participation. Political participation is so much more than just voting. That's what they want you to believe, that your political participation is defined by who you voted for in some national election where, and this is the truth, it does not matter in an instrumental sort of way. So does that mean you shouldn't vote or shouldn't care about voting? No, it does not mean. It means that your political participation is much bigger and grander than your, voting once every 4 years or once every 2 years, if you are able to do that, or once every year at your local elections. Political participation is much better thought of as, I'm going to be active in my community. That's political participation, and the most rewarding and important political participation you can do. Does it mean you shouldn't vote? No, it does not mean you shouldn't vote. You should vote. You should vote as an expression of your identity. You should vote because it makes you feel good to participate and to say something. As infinitesimal as it is, it's not infinitesimal to you. It's not infinitesimal to you. Voting's a crucial way to say something. And saying none of the above, if that's how you want to express your identity, and frankly, right now, it's how I want to express my identity, that's great. That's perfect. Don't let anyone tell you how to vote, is what I'm saying. Don't let anyone tell you how to vote. The thing that burns me out the most is saying, well, not voting for Biden, well, that's a vote for Trump. And I hear the same thing from the Trump side. Well, not voting for Trump, that's a vote for Biden. And I literally have people from both sides tell me that. At which point I say, well, that can't be right then. If both of you think that not voting for your candidate is a vote for the other guy, how then that can't be right. It can't be right. Now, understand why the candidates want to encourage that line of thinking. Because, as we've discussed at length, every national election is a turnout election. It's not about changing someone's mind. It's not about getting somebody from party A to switch over to party B. It's about getting more of people who are loosely affiliated with your party to show up that day. That's it. That's the instrumental way to win an election. And what I'm telling you is don't let anybody tell you how to vote. All of these approaches are perfectly fine. If you want to vote for the lesser of two evils, that's great. I was kind of there for a long time. That, I like, okay, Trump, I do think is a disaster as a president. I don't want to see him elected, but I can't do it anymore with I can't. Then that's me personally. But everyone's going to be different, and don't let anyone tell you how to vote, including don't let anyone tell you don't vote. You can vote however you want to, and make that the smallest part of your political participation, not the largest part.
So we have to shift here to my favorite part of every episode here. But before we do that, Ben, I just want to say one of the other takeaways from the conference was that a star was born. I don't know our friend here. I think everything that goes on at Epsilon Connect stays at Epsilon Connect, but I think it's fair to say, as Liam Neeson said, that our friend Matt here has a particular set of skills. And it was really cool to watch what Matt did, and what he did. Matt was the moderator of a lot of things, and he hosted some interviews, and it was really cool to see, Matt, what you were able to do at the conference and what we've always known from watching you do this.
Thank you very much, Jack. It's fun to be on stage sometimes. I've had a little practice over the years.
But moving on to our Cultish Corner here, what do you got for us this week?
I've got a fun segment, and I can't remember if I had this post come out while we were in Nashville together or not, but there's a survey question that I don't expect any yes from either of you on, but a little band called Fugazi. Have either of you ever heard of Fugazi? Are they on your radar whatsoever?
Not me.
Like that much. Okay, you've seen the name.
Yeah.
This is part of and I mean, I could probably do, because I just want to tell Ben in particular, I want to tell you Steve Albini stories for days. There's a great Steve Albini story about where he and Fugazi, then this burgeoning, well, let me start with this. So Fugazi is basically in the late 70s, early 80s, there's this DC punk rock hardcore movement, and Minor Threat is kind of the defining band of this era. Everybody else comes in to copy Minor Threat and what they're doing with the speed, the breakdowns, the style, this entire like almost religious level straight edge movement that gets labeled on top of the lead singer Ian MacKaye and his stance on drugs and alcohol and cheap shows and all ages and all these things. And as soon as they get to a certain size and he realizes that everybody's copying them and expecting them to do the same thing, he kills the band. It's like, nope, it's done. Don't need that anymore. This is beyond the scope of what I want to do. What am I supposed to do? Make it moshier, make it louder, make it faster. I'm not interested in just perpetuating this thing that's now a formula. And so the hardcore scene really gets off and running like almost after Minor Threat disbands, but after they've influenced literally everybody who then is going to copy it for the next 10 plus years ad nauseum. One of the really cool things that happens is he goes and he rejoins some of his friends in DC and they start this band called Fugazi. And some other things happen in the middle. They do a couple of albums. There's a great thing when they're finally hitting that upswing, and it's right before when punk breaks, when grunge is exploding on the scene. Fugazi is temporarily like every band when they're on tour, like Eddie Vedder's there with Pearl Jam, Nirvana's there. And they're like, can you show us, like they get to DC, it's like, can you show us where Ian lives? We want to see where Ian and Guy live. We want to see the house. Like they're that legendary. They go to Chicago to record this album with Steve Albini, who then is the guy who ends up doing In Utero, and he does PJ Harvey, and he does The Breeders, and he's the sound of the 80s and the 90s, and a great musician in his own right. They record an album together. They're all jazzed about it. And both the band and Steve Albini just go, we had fun, but it wasn't good enough. It doesn't capture the essence. Like, would have been the most legendary combo. And they were like, no, just kill it. So I say this as preamble because if you don't know any of the backstory of Fugazi, it's ethics and community all the way down the most beautiful and profound way. So I have to tell you the story about why you can't buy a Fugazi t-shirt. And as a 90s kid, this is one of those things where you just want to rep your favorite bands the hardest. You want to get this piece of gear, and there is no Fugazi shirt anywhere, ever. Now, the band has this whole thing, and again, community and ethics is like the superseding thing. No scale without community and ethics first. So the band notoriously would charge $5 for entrance to a show. That is really cheap. Even by like the mid to late 90s, bands are charging 20, 50, soon to be 80s and hundreds of dollars in Ticketmaster and all those scandals. And Fugazi is still out there going, we mostly want to only play at clubs where we can rent the hall. So we don't want to go in and have somebody else set up sound and security and all that stuff. We want to come in, we want to rent the room, we only want to charge $5. We don't even want a bar in the room. We want the show to be all ages so that anybody who can afford to come can get in the door. And if you can't afford to come, we're probably still going to get you in if you want to come in because we want you to experience this music. They look at this whole thing and they go, everybody's telling them you should have merch. They've already got like Ian MacKaye starts Discord Records, phenomenal record label with the same ethic. They know how to make money. They know how to do this. They know how to build a small survivable profit margin into everything they do. They are not communists. But so now the merch question comes in. You guys have to have merch. You got to have shirts, hats, pins, all the stuff. And they think about it. They're like, okay, the cost to print the shirts, transport the shirts to shows. We're going to need a merch guy to sit at the table and sell the shirts. There's no way we can do this without increasing the sticker price to our shows. That doesn't meet our community and ethics standards. What did Fugazi never, ever friggin' have? Shirts. Once some guy, all of a sudden these shirts show up on the scene. I remember a couple of them around the neighborhood. A couple of skater kids have them. And it says, this is not a Fugazi shirt. It's like, what is this? So it turns out some guy in Boston basically has this whole call with Ian and is like, can I please make a Fugazi shirt? He's like, no. He's like, okay, I won't make a Fugazi shirt. I'll screen print up shirts that say, this is not a Fugazi shirt. He tracks him down. Ian tracks this guy down. And he goes, you know what? You're funny. You're funny. But what I want you to do is we're going to see if you're good at math as much as you're good at being clever and a comedian here. I want you to calculate the profit you would give a band if you'd make these shirts and give them to a charity. And I found a great scene. It's on a Cultish Creative blog post about this. The guy who made the shirts actually made a charitable donation with the proceeds of the shirts from the band's proceeds after the request of the conversation with Ian to a women's shelter in Boston for all the years that he was in business over those shirts.
Hard That's to amazing, find. Matt.
That's such a cool story.
Fugazi put ethics and community over scale over and over and over and over and over again. Discord Records still doing the same thing. Ian MacKaye still out there doing this stuff. It's a wonderful and magical thing. They have a song. It's called Merchandise. The line of the song is merchandise keeps us in line. Common sense, it's by design. What could a businessman ever want more than to have us sucking in his store? We owe you nothing. You have no control. You are not what you own. Those words are imprinted on my brain in that merchandise song. These lessons and stories about you put ethics and community, I felt them so strongly at that conference of saying, this is what's first. Not the scale, nothing else. The experience of the people in this room who choose to gather here and do this performance together. I don't know if I'm going to convert you guys into Fugazi fans, but I know you'll appreciate that story.
I'm definitely going to listen to it.
Thank you, Matt.
I got notes. Let me read us out here. We started off big picture election 2024 as a sporting event. I feel this so much. Like the Trump trial, it's a sporting event. The Biden stuff, it's a sporting event. We're filling airtime in this coverage, and it really does feel like local sports talk radio. The job of the host isn't to shift common knowledge. The job of the host is to drive the base. The story that might be shifting in the common knowledge, watch this frail Biden stuff. It's shifting. The election is still months away. That's a piece of the zeitgeist you want to follow on at. In the zeitgeist, we talk about being human. We talked about, I wrote this down for myself. I think one of my biggest takeaways was having humanity. This making, protecting, teaching on how to use AI, yes, the tool, but also make, protect, teach on how to have humanity. Gen AI, Ben, as you said, can be humanizing. We can weaponize it to dehumanize too, but the humanizing goodness of the tools we surround ourselves with, just like Fugazi rejecting the merchandise, it's finding these things to have humanity and making that the priority. We talked about big colleges, big business, how a lot of common knowledge is shifting around school and even the attitudes in education. When a European private equity fund can come in with a $5 billion pre-money valuation on a Big 12 conference, is it about athletics, or are we kind of like, I wrote down, is this is tuition the new tithes. The crowds are aware of what's going on here. We're seeing a shift. That's worth watching too. Our listener question. I love this quote, Ben. I know you've said this before, but it just hits home extra hard today. Your vote is and should be the smallest part of your political participation. Your vote doesn't matter, but your broader participation, political participation, matters a lot. The vote that you choose to write in, or if you say none of the above, or you do whatever, you still should go out and vote, because a vote is an expression of your identity, which means you have to act as an extension of your identity in your community. Breadcrumbs is what I'm leaving you on. If nothing else, the breadcrumbs. You really have to, if you see one, you see the second, you see a third, you got to follow that path. A whole swimming pool of breadcrumbs. I love that. I love that. That's poetic, Ben. And it's just the diversity of curious people when you get them together. There's actually hope in connection. There's not hope in merchandise. There's hopes in ethics, in community, in connection. Gentlemen, we hit the hour mark. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're watching breaking news so more people can find our show. If you know another clear-eyed and full-hearted individual, why not share this episode with them too? Like we said at the top, the media is making us tick, and it's our job to talk. Follow the headlines at fiatnews.com. Follow Ben at epsilontheory.com and at Epsilon Theory on Twitter. Follow Jack at validiacapital.com and at Practical Quant on Twitter. Follow Matt at sunpointinvestments.com, cultishcreative.com, and at Cultish Creative on Twitter.